Valley. You know what it is.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to a special presentation of Puck Puck Pat. Is that okay? Can I call this Puck Puck Pass? We're good.
Sure, let's do that.
Yeah. We asked you guys how you wanted us to fill the void in content, and weekly videos was one of the highest voted options, and we have a ton of fun doing it, so we wanted to bring you something awesome. I'm KJ, as always, joined by Zach Mack with his layout of beautiful hats. How are you doing today, bud?
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm real good. I'm really excited for this because you dropped a hint on Twitter earlier, but for anyone who didn't see it, we're doing a 4-part series on each division in the NHL. Simple enough, but you know how we are with our hot takes, bad takes, good takes, whatever you want to call them. And we'll have plenty as we kind of quickly run through all 31 teams, but really dive into the details of each division, because I feel like so many different outlets do it differently, and this was our spin on it. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to go alphabetically? Do you want to start with who we each have ranked like 8th, moving on to 1?
Yeah, let's do that.
Look
Let's
at
do
our
that.
prep. We did.
Yeah, we'll start to. We'll start from the bottom. That's fine.
Okay.
Work our way up.
All right. I'm trying to remember your tweet off the top of my head, but I'll start with my number 8, Ottawa Senators.
Yeah, that's who I had there too. I have them winning an extra game. They got 64 points last year. I'm giving them 66 this year, but I just don't see much. They haven't done enough in the offseason.
No, especially you don't really expect them to do a ton. I mean, they got Artem Anisimov from the Blackhawks today for Zach Smith, which I like that trade for both sides. Ottawa's best player is still, I think he's 20 years old, Thomas Chabot. A really good young defenseman, but they have, I mean, I have written in all caps, bad. There's no real deep dive into this team.
Yeah, I got Thomas Chabot, Brady Tkachuk. That's it. That's what I wrote.
And Tkachuk is much better he's gotten off to a much quicker start than I thought he would. And both Tkachuks are they're doing a lot in this league, and I think Brady's really good, but that team as a whole, there's so many pieces missing, and leadership is obviously a huge question, and all the way up to ownership. It's tragic, but it's another Canadian team in the dumpster. We love it. Let's move on to 7, because I think this is where the differences start. Who's your 7th overall team in the Atlantic Division? We're starting with the Atlantic Division. We didn't really go into that. We're going to start with the Atlantic Division.
If you haven't figured out now, because probably most of you don't even know where the Senators exist, or that they even exist. So they are in the Atlantic Division. That's where we're at. I've got Montreal in my 7th. I've got a huge fall off. I just don't see how they can repeat what they were able to do last year unless Carey Price plays like beyond what he's capable of playing. I think it's a suspect roster at best, and the culture seems to be dwindling in Montreal.
Yeah, I think they're in for a rude awakening. I don't have them that low, but I do like that take because they overachieved. I mean, for anyone who doesn't look at points, they just looked at where teams got into the playoffs. The Montreal Canadiens had more points than the Vegas Golden Knights last year. So would they have gotten in the West? You can't really tell because the schedule is obviously so different. They wouldn't play in this division, that's for sure, and that's where a lot of those points come from. But it's our motto, Carey Price is overrated, and he is. But for me, the 7th team is the Detroit Red Wings. They don't really have direction. I think there's a little too much Steve Yzerman hype. I love Steve Yzerman too, like I've said on the podcast. Captain the dog, named after Steve Yzerman. But the Lightning had guys like Stamkos and Hedman before Yzerman got there. And yes, Dylan Larkin's good. I have him down as their best player. But that doesn't really provide you much direction because Dylan Larkin is a really fast playmaker with a good wrist shot, not great defensively, so you don't really know how to classify him. A lot of teams build around a guy you can classify. Ovechkin's a sniper. Crosby's a playmaker. Larkin is finding that maybe he's a great two-way player this year because of a direction they're taking, but we don't know that because they haven't laid out direction for us at all. But I mean, you're the Red Wings fan. I know you'd want them higher, but I can't see any real idea of what they're building there.
Yeah, I've got them in 6. I mean, it just brings me right to number 6. I've only got them a game or two ahead of Montreal finishing in the standings. So I've also got Larkin down, But to exactly what you were speaking about, I got to see improvements. I need more playmaking from Athanasiou, and I think if he can solidify himself as because he's got the speed to be that playmaker that they need on offense, and if he can break into that role a little bit more, maybe it opens a slot for Larkin and possibly even Mantha, who can, if he shoots more, can be a good finisher. But I agree with you. I don't think all the pieces are there yet. I got to see more improvements before I put him any higher.
Yeah, that's a good point on Athanasiou too. He could be a better Hagelin type player, like really fast. He's just got to get with the puck. Darren Helm. I mean, he could be a better Darren Helm. For my number 6, it's the Buffalo Sabres. Again, with the no direction stuff, they've got Jack Eichel. They've got pretty good young talent that includes Eichel. This team could swing one of two ways, and it'll be drastic in either way. Not so much from their performance last season, but just to start, they could get hot and stay hot, or they could never do anything at all. There's not really an in-between for a team that's built this way. Rasmus Dahlin is awesome. He's going to continue to be great, but Rasmus Ristolainen took a huge step back last year, and we don't know what we're going to get from him next year. Dylan Cousins was a good draft pick, but they could just find enough streaky play to. I'm not saying this is going to happen before I say this, but they could hit enough streaks to be an Eastern Conference playoff team. It's not out of the question.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that they only finished a game behind Detroit last year after they went on that 10-game win streak that everyone got so hyped about. But
except for you, because you said it was fake. I'm just kidding.
But it was a good point. You brought up about Ristolainen because I see a lot of question marks from the Sabres fan base on whether they want to commit to him long term or whether he's a piece of their future. So I agree with you that there's a lot of question marks surrounding Buffalo, and you're right. They could be at the top, they could be at the bottom. I don't.
Yeah, there's not a lot. And if Jack Eichel can lead this team and be it, because I feel like he can either lead or be a great player. And he needs to put that together. We were talking about Steve Eisman. I mean, that's the best example of it. If he can find that happy medium and do for this team in the locker room what he can also do on the ice, better team than last year, that's for sure. I'll go right into my number 5 because you already said that Montreal Canadiens. Basically, I have it written down. They're better than Detroit, Buffalo, and Ottawa. But, that's my reasoning for them being 5th. Carey Price is their best player. That's not saying much. They're not really building anything. Max Domi's a good player. Not enough to take them to the playoffs consistently, at least. I mean, there's no question that they could be a playoff team this year. And I know you want to get into Montreal being a playoff team because we kind of breezed through it. But I won't let that comment go by. But as far as the locker room, I just don't really see a guy that's ready to take this team to the playoffs. And I can't remember, Paul Byron, I think his name is. Someone was telling me he's like a consistent 30-goal scorer, and that's why Montreal is going to be better this year. He's only played for Montreal, if I'm not mistaken, and he's never been a 30-goal scorer. He's scored 20 goals, but they think they've got some sniper in Paul Byron. It's not going to happen. But you were told today that Montreal has to be in the hunt. Has to be in the hunt. I know you talk about Montreal as their 7th overall team, but even from 5 to 7, as far as playoff standings, that's a huge difference. Is there anything Montreal can do as far as who's on that team now to surprise, I don't want to say everyone, because probably some people have them in the hunt, but can Montreal bring themselves back to the playoffs and be a contender, or is it just Carey Price and the rest is noise?
Yeah, I mean, I've got Carey Price down as their obvious best player. But if we want to talk skaters, I mean, offense, they've got Tatar and they've got Kokaniemi, but I don't really see where they have the offense, the consistent offensive firepower that they need to be a contender. And I don't think that they can do what they did last year. I don't think that they've gotten better anywhere that they've needed to get better.
That's a good point. I don't think they've really gotten better either. They're really only better than a few teams in this division. Whether we disagree or not on who they're better than, they're not even close to the top tier of this division.
No, yeah.
Even if they're playing on all cylinders all year. Let's move right on to 4. I think we agree. Who's your number 4?
Wait. I got to throw my 5 in there because we didn't. I got Florida at 5.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Who's your 5?
Florida. I'm assuming that you got them before, but I'm not. I'll let you get to that. But I just like Florida's direction. I think that we've seen them go full build through free agency before, and it got them in the playoffs. But I think it's good on them to realize that they need to build a fan base. And I've got Barkov and Huberto down, and Dadadov's he could be there too. And they added Strawman on the blue line, so I think they're building a core around that. At least fans. I don't know how many of them are down there, but at least something that they can get around for the future.
Well, and I'll forgive you for not mentioning it because it is still pretty fresh, as in a couple weeks. Their best player is Sergei Bobrovsky.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I love Sasha Barkov. Huberto's been great. I
like Trocheck too.
I was gonna say I'm pretty sure they still have Vinny Trocheck. They've got good players. And transitioning right to my number 4, I think they're a playoff team. I think last year showed that even if he's a streaky goaltender, you can get into the playoffs with a goaltender that just gets hot. And Bobrovsky can not only get hot, but he can stay hot. And he definitely was through the first round this postseason. They have enough offense overall? They've got really skilled players, but generating goals is a totally different game. I think they'll be able to. They've got a lot to prove. I mean, you signed Bobrovsky, and you talked about fans because now they're the team in the Southeast without the fans. Because if Carolina, and we'll talk about them when we talk about the Metro, but if Carolina builds this fan base, then we're kind of looking at Florida as the only team in the Southeast in the Eastern Conference with that lack of fans. So hopefully Bobrovsky, I don't think it'll be right away, but if they're looking like a playoff team, I think they're going to fill that building and fill it consistently. And I hope they do, because as much as people like to knock it and say we should have a team in Quebec, and a team in Florida is never a bad thing. 2 teams in Florida looks like a bad thing. So hopefully they can prove those people. Who's your number 4?
4, I had Buffalo at 4. So I know we talked a little bit about how, we don't really know where they're going to end up. And this is obviously a clear case. You've got them towards the bottom. I've got them. I got them a game above Florida. I put them at 92 points. I think you already mentioned Eichel. They got Skinner. They picked up Marcus Johansson, which I think is like some sparkable depth. I think that's like some scoring you can get from.
That's 18 goals.
Yeah, I think that's maybe what they needed, because we saw them go on that 10-game win streak, and I think if they could figure it out and just get it to be a little more consistent, I don't think they're all the way there yet, but I took a leap of faith and put them towards the top, and I have them at 4th.
And I can't knock you for that, because they're not that far from being 4 but I don't think they're gonna be able to pull it together. That's why they're at 6. If I thought they could pull it together, they're at maybe 3, definitely 4. And I'll jump right into it. My number 3 is the Boston Bruins. They're getting old-ish. We talked about it a little bit with Kevin on the podcast. Mm-hmm. Can Rask repeat for the whole season what he did in the playoffs last year outside of Game 7? Probably not. They luck out with this division, though. They're one of the luckier teams that never – they don't really have to get better, because they didn't over this offseason, but no one below them really got that much better. So all they have to do is hang with Toronto and Tampa. Spoiler alert. And they're golden, and that's why I have them at 3, because I think they know they only have to be the 3rd best team.
Yeah, I also got them at 3. I've got them losing a couple more games than they did last year. You mentioned it; they're getting old. Bergeron, Krejci are both 33. Marchand's at 31. I still got Marchand down as their best player.
I do too, yeah.
For the time being, but it's important to note that they played the most games out of anyone last year that didn't win a Stanley Cup, and couple that with the fact that they're getting old. I just think they're just going to be dwindling in wins. Like you said, they're not, because of the way the division is, they're not going to fall all the way off. But I think we're going to start to see them, if they can't get an extra piece in there, we're going to start to see them lose wins season by season.
And Marcus Johansson was one of those pieces that could have provided that spark. And like you said, now in Buffalo, we'll see how that plays out for them. I feel like we have 1 and 2 the same, but I'll jump right into number 2. Toronto Maple Leafs, most talented team in the division, but I can't put them at 1 yet. They have the highest expectations of probably anyone in the league. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would agree.
And they also have the most to lose. Are they going to sign Marner? Probably. At this point, midway through July, it's safe to assume that Marner's going to be a Leaf. And they're going to be trying to avoid Boston because even if Boston is a wild card team, if Toronto ends up the 1 seed, they'll probably lose to Boston. Like Boston's just in their head now.
Yeah.
No matter how old or downtrodden they get, they'll be playing to avoid Boston, but they're also going to be playing to prove that they can be cohesive and that the offseason troubles aren't going to affect them. They've added really good pieces, and as long as you have Austin Matthews and John Tavares, by the way, probably not a great take, but I have Austin Matthews as their best player, far and away their best player. They're going to be such a good team and so fun to watch, just like they were last year. But I have them at number 2.
Yeah, I also have them at number 2, a couple wins ahead of Boston. I also have Austin Matthews down as the best player.
Love it.
They lost Nazem Kadri, and as often as people want to throw, whether or not his discipline had anything to do with that is a whole nother argument. But if that was a distraction, it's gone now, and I think, they're the most talented team in the division. I would agree, though, I can't put them at number 1 yet just because of, well, I don't want to spoil it. I'm keeping them at 2. I don't really have much. I think Tavares quietly put up 47 goals, but I say quietly because I don't really pay that much attention to the Leafs, as not more than I have to, at least.
Wasn't that quietly for me? It got me to the finals in fantasy hockey. So thank you, John Tavares. But no, you bring up a good point with the Kadri trade, and we'll move on to number 1. But losing Kadri, I think culturally, is kind of a double-edged sword. Yeah, you're getting rid of a guy who's been a little bit suspension prone, especially in the playoffs, and but you're getting back a really good young defenseman. And what has everyone been saying for basically since Matthews has been drafted? You need a defenseman, and I think they got one of the better ones that they could get under the circumstances. And the cap isn't killing them just yet, so we'll see how that plays out. Number one from last year too. It's the Tampa Bay Lightning. Just their scores. I have Kucherov as their best player, obviously. John Cooper still can't get this team over the hump, and I think that's going to be the same thing. But there's too much there, and they play too many games against bad teams to think that they'll have anything less than 112 points.
Yeah, I got them at 117 points. They finished with 128 last year. I don't think they do that again. But awesome. I got Vasilevsky down as their best player. But if we want to go skater, I put Kucherov, but I got a question mark. I'm still not sold on the guy. I don't know if you've seen all the advanced stats they show, but he's scoring all of his goals, and his multi-point or multi-goal games are coming against teams at the bottom of the conference. So I think he's a great player. I still would be slightly inclined to take Stamkos over Kucherov, but
I don't think you get a ton of pushback from that, honestly. I saw a tweet today. Was it Spectre? I can't remember exactly who it was, but they said that the best pure shooter in NHL history is Steven Stamkos. Which shocked me and they did qualify it. That doesn't mean best scorer because obviously that's Ovechkin, but Kucherov, Stamkos, and Hedman is a core and a half for a lot of teams.
Absolutely.
And Tampa's been able to keep it all together. I don't think they've signed Point yet. But like you said, Vasilevsky's back there too, holding it down for them. So it's hard to argue against them being 1. I wouldn't hate anyone who put Toronto at 1 just because of the moves they've made. But after last season, yes, playoff disappointment can change a team, but not in the regular season, not in the Atlantic Conference. I think they're too stacked, not as talented, like I said, but they can just put it all together. They're so good.
And they're down there, they're down there in Florida. You mentioned Florida earlier, but they can be on that sort of revenge tour type of deal without really anybody knowing it. So I think you're right. I just think there's no fall off from being swept in the first round. Yeah, it stung, but I think these guys are just gonna.
Isn't that weird to even formulate in your head that a team that was a record-setting team is on a revenge tour?
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, they're going to be. I mean, that first game against Columbus, I don't know when it is, but Columbus got so bad. I don't want to spoil the Metro division, but Columbus got so bad. We're probably looking at like 12-0 Bolts in that first game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I think that wraps up the Atlantic Division. Any last second notes on our Atlantic Division breakdown?
No, what's the next division that we can have these folks looking forward to?
All right. So we're working on when we're gonna do this next. We'll let you know by the end of the night. But we're gonna be talking the Pacific Division. Let's go Golden Knights, baby. We've got a ton of great stuff packed over these next 3 episodes. We hope you guys enjoyed this one. And like I said, we're going to be using videos to bring you guys content because you don't want to listen to an hour of me just talking about the Golden Knights and Chicago Blackhawks. I can't wait for that preview. But we're not done with the podcast entirely for the summer, but this is going to be our main communication with all our listeners are so great. I mean, do you see how many people were still signing up for the giveaway? I mean, you guys make this possible. Also, while we're talking on making it possible, I did go back to Belly Up KJ on Twitter. I missed it. I missed the BU in my name. So we are back to Belly Up KJ. Find me on Twitter at Belly Up Zach Mack. For Zach Mack, I'm KJ. We'll talk to you guys next time with the Pacific Division breakdown.